Good morning. Welcome to the Spartan Nash Fall Expo 2022. My name is Jason Cunningham, Vice President of Own Brands, and I am really excited to introduce today's guest speaker. As you're all aware, today we're facing many challenges, whether it's inflation, consumer sentiment changes, or competitive pressures. We all have a lot going on in our business lives. Today's speaker, though, is a great example of optimism and hope. Melissa Stockwell woke up one morning at Walter Reed Hospital after the convoy she was leading in Iraq had been hit by a roadside bomb near Baghdad. She was facing a major crossroads in her life. The story she is about to share is both inspiring and a testament to positivity. Without further delay, I want to have you help me welcome not only the Our Family spokesperson, but a patriot in the true sense of the word. Please put your hands together and help me welcome Melissa Stockwell to the stage.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, Spartan Nash. Yes, it's great to be here. Great to be in person and see all your lovely faces. I love the green, and just really happy to be here as part of the Our Family brand. I truly love being a spokesperson, love the products, love the recipes, and just really happy to be here. So you just heard a little bit about my story, but what I'm going to do this morning is share with you a little bit more. And the hope is that when we're done here and you go out to the expo, maybe you go home tonight back to your hotel room, you think about what we talked about here and how you can apply it to your everyday life. So on April 13th of 2004, I woke up that morning with both of my legs, and I went to sleep that night with just one of them. Definitely not part of my to-do list for the day. That's funny. It's okay to laugh. Not really part of my life plan either, right? That's kind of the beauty of life. You never know what life is going to bring until it brings it. I knew that my chosen profession as a military officer had its risks, but you never think that something like this is going to happen to you until it does. In a moment, I'm going to tell you that story. But first, I want to ask all of you a question. If there was something traumatic, unexpected, that came into your own life, how would you handle it? In essence, we have with COVID. But aside from COVID, what would you do? Would you run from it? Would you run to it? Do you tackle it head on? Maybe you even end up better on the other side? Well, I'm here to tell you that you can do just that. And today I'm going to tell you why. So I like to say that I was born a patriot, a lover of our country from a very young age. And as I grew up and I saw military personnel, whether they were on TV in the community, they had a uniform on, they had a flag patch on their shoulder, and I just knew that that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to give back to a country that I felt had given me so much. So my story eventually led me out to the University of Colorado in Boulder. And freshman year, I saw cadets marching around campus. And I just knew I wanted to be a part of that. You could just tell how much of a team that they were, that camaraderie. So sophomore year, I marched into the recruiter's office, a recruiting officer's dream, marched up to his desk, and I said, I want to join the Army. What do I do? He's like, well, here's a stack of paperwork. You can sign your name on these papers. So I did that, handed over the paperwork. He handed me over my very first military uniform. Went back to my dorm room, put that uniform on, and just knew that that's what I was supposed to do with my life, that pride that I felt. So I don't come from a military family. My parents knew of my desire to be in the Army, but they kind of thought it was a phase I was passing through. Like, why would their youngest daughter actually want to join the Army? So imagine their surprise when sophomore year they got a phone call and I said, guess what, mom and dad? I just joined ROTC. I'm going to be in the Army. And there was kind of this like awkward pause, as parents can do so well. And my dad, not really knowing what else to say, blurted out, are you sure they allow girls in the Army? So it was this unknown world that we were all diving into together. But of course, they allow girls, and I fell in love with it. I got to wear my uniform. I had to have this camaraderie with my fellow cadets. I got to learn these leadership drills, these battle drills. I got to paint my face in mud and roll around in it. And I loved everything that it stood for. And then senior year in college, in a day that changed the world, September 11th of 2001. If you recall, this was a Tuesday. And like every Tuesday, my senior year of college, it was ROTC day, which basically meant I woke up every Tuesday, I put my uniform on, and I went to learn about the military, the history of it, the battle drills. So like every Tuesday, I had my uniform on, sitting in a classroom with my fellow cadets as we watched the news unfold on TV. And it was that day that our instructor looked at us all and he said, today, your lives are going to change. Not a matter of if you're deployed to a foreign country, it's more a matter of when. So the uniform that I was so proud to wear on American soil, I knew I'd probably be wearing it on foreign soil as well. But first, a few months later, I graduated. I was commissioned as a second lieutenant into the United States Army with my once skeptical but now very proud parents by my side. And I set off into the wide world of the Army. So the fateful day of April 13th, 2004 started out just like any other day over in Iraq. Woke up early. We had our briefing on the day's mission. I got into my vehicle, which was a Humvee. We had no armor, no doors. It was early on in the war, and we had a job to do, and we did that regardless with what we have. And our vehicle took off from our forward operating base. And about 10 minutes into the ride, we were going right into central Baghdad. We went under this bridge, just an overpass, as we drive under many times a day. As we went under this bridge, there was this deafening boom. Black smoke, the smell of metal, the vehicle swerves. We hit a guardrail, we ricochet off of it. I look up, the windshield is crashed, and the woman in the front is yelling, IED, IED, we've hit an IED, which we all knew meant side bomb. The vehicle eventually crashed into this woman's house, and the other soldiers in the vehicle did exactly what they were supposed to do. They got out of the vehicle, they surrounded it, they pointed their weapons out to assess the situations. We had been through situations like this in training. That's what training is for. And they executed it perfectly. So I started to do just that. I took my seatbelt off, I looked over, I looked down. I knew something was wrong. There was a lot of blood. And I called out, I'm hurt, I'm hurt. And lucky for me, there was a combat medic who was trained in field first aid a few vehicles back, and he heard me. He rushed up to my vehicle, he pulled me out of it by my bulletproof vest, and he laid me there on the sands of Iraq. Now, at the time, I had no idea really what was going on. There was a lot of commotion, and I remember laying there on my back, consciously trying to move my leg. Everyone seemed very concerned about what was happening below my waist. In my mind, I was moving it. I know now it's called phantom pain or phantom sensation, where you think you have something, but you no longer do. And I know now that that combat medic wasn't just administering first aid, but he was saving my life. My leg was gone, been severed. And you can imagine the amount of blood loss. And going from there to the nearest Baghdad emergency room, going into a life-saving surgery, and waking up a few days later and in that hospital room and seeing this picture and realizing that that was my vehicle, that windshield that was crashed in, and the realization that that was blood. A picture that was once really hard to look at. But this many years later, you can look at this picture, I can look at it, and I can see how far I've come. I can see the power of the human spirit and how we can get through things that come our way. But from that moment, it was hard to believe that just 1 year earlier, I was at my very first duty assignment as an Army officer. I was in Fort Hood, Texas, part of the 1st Cavalry Division. I was 23 years old, and I was thrown into these leadership roles of being put in charge of soldiers that were older than I was, being put in charge of millions of dollars worth of equipment, a daunting challenge, one that I was excited and ready to take on. And then a few months after being sent to Fort Hood, orders came down that my unit, the 1st Cavalry Division, was going to deploy over to Iraq early the following year. So I knew my time was going to come, and in March of 2004, it did. And our green military uniforms were switched over to the desert camouflage uniforms. We boarded a plane with Kevlar, weapon in hand, bulletproof vest on, to head over to Iraq. So it was going to be a year-long tour. And we landed first in Kuwait, and the plane lands in this surreal moment where you realize you're no longer at home. You step off the plane, heat hits you, weight of your equipment. You drive down these barren landscape roads. You look across in the distance and you see these little huts. And you realize that there are people, it's their homes, and just how different the day-to-day life is. Eventually going from Kuwait up into Iraq and crossing that border, and the heart starts to beat a little bit faster. Getting to the bustling city of Baghdad, and there's just commotion everywhere, and you just have no idea. Do they want you there? Do they not? And not really sure what your life is going to be like over there. Eventually settling into what was going to be my home for the next year, a little town called Taji, which was just north of Baghdad. And settling into my day-to-day routine over in Iraq. I had 2 jobs over there. The first one was my favorite because I got to be in charge of 20 men and women, my soldiers. A lot of them 18 years old, just out of high school, trying to find their way in the world. And they find themselves with me as their leader in this faraway land, but you become family, that camaraderie just stronger than that. My other job was a convoy commander. So basically, I'd be in charge of leading a whole bunch of vehicles from one point to the next, delivering various supplies. And as a convoy commander, you're in charge of the route, the soldiers, just kind of making sure everything went. We'd been in Iraq for 3 short weeks before April 13th came up on the calendar. But I was a proud soldier. I was leading soldiers. I was carrying out missions. Just never think that a roadside bomb is going to come into your life, because things like that you always think are going to happen to someone. But this time, it was me. And I was lifted from the sands of Iraq. I was put in the back of this kind of 5-ton pickup truck, driven to the nearest aid station, where I was put on a helicopter, flown to the nearest American hospital, which happened to be right in central Baghdad. Rushed into a life-saving surgery. And when I woke up, I looked to the surgeon next to me and I said, something happened to my leg. I still had no idea. That's when he said, it's gone. You don't have it anymore. And looking back all these years, I feel like what I should have said was, well, can you look again? Because it seemed so surreal that in a second, a leg was gone, and I had no choice in the matter. It was just gone. But from that moment, I had a choice. Life is all about choices. And I'm proud to say that mentally, I was able to move on. But first, I moved on physically. So I went from that hospital bed right in central Baghdad to Lawrence Army Medical Center, which is where I was stabilized before making the long trip home. It just so happened that my sister lived in Europe. My dad was on business in Europe. And the day after this life-changing injury, I had 2 immediate family members rush into my hospital room. Talk about starting things off right, literally on the right foot. All I had left. Yeah. Spending a few days in Lawrence before making the long trip back to the U.S., landing at Walter Reed Army Medical Center, which at the time is where all the wounded soldiers went from Iraq and Afghanistan. And it was here where my mom met me, and my parents, once skeptical of me joining the military, then proud, and then strong and steadfast by my side, oftentimes reassuring each other that things were going to be okay. And when I was kind of able to get out of my hospital room and look around, I saw soldiers at Walter Reed that were missing 2, 3, 4 limbs. They lost their eyesight. They had traumatic brain injuries. And I looked at myself and I thought, man, I'm the lucky one. 1 leg. That was it. Not to mention, I still had my life because too many have given and continue to give that ultimate sacrifice. And making a promise then to live my life for those who no longer could. Not to let stopping a leg stop me from doing anything that I wanted to do. I did receive a Purple Heart, a Bronze Star, obviously medals that you never expect to get, but ones that are proudly displayed at home. But what made my time at Walter Reed great were the doctors, and going family and friends that dropped everything they were doing to come to my bedside and let me know that I wasn't. But you can imagine it's tough. I was 24 years old, and in a second, a leg was gone. So I would lay there in my hospital bed and wonder, what is my life going to be like? Will I walk? Will I ever run? Will I be independent? And all these thoughts just go through your head as you sit there just waiting on surgeries and for your body to heal. But lucky for me, at Walter Reed, they did whatever they could to help us pass the time. So we had a lot of visitors, so whether they were high-ranking military officers, politicians, celebrities. And I like to share my 2 favorites because they still stand out to me today. So I'd been in the hospital for a few weeks, and one morning, the nurse comes in, she's all excited, and she said, guess who's coming today? And, oh, who? And a few hours later, who walks in my room but Tom Hanks. Extremely genuine, walks around, he sits down on the bed, we talk about that volleyball Wilson from the movie Castaway. And that night there was this event, and he gives me a shout out, and I just feel like I'm on top of the world. And then a few weeks later, who walks in my room but the Osbournes. So Sharon and Ozzy Osbourne come in, and Ozzy literally tries to climb a stack of chairs. It's like 10 high. Sharon sits on the bed. I have no idea how to small talk with Sharon Osbourne. They're a little bit blurry, kind of like the picture, but I will forever be grateful of anyone that took the time to come and let us know that what we had done mattered. I also learned at Walter Reed that, as kind of silly as it may sound, it's okay to celebrate the loss of a leg. So a lot of soldiers have what's called their alive days, which means that every year, on the day that they were injured, instead of mourning what they've lost, they celebrate what they still have. What a genius idea. That other than our birthdays, other than your own birthday, when is the last time that any of you took a moment just to think about your life and celebrate it? Instead of thinking about the negative things that happen, to think about the good, how we're just so lucky to sleep in a warm bed, have food on the table, and that we're all just so lucky to live the lives that we do. So taking a day to celebrate that. And I took it one step further. I named what was left of my leg, Little Leg. It's a leg that's little. And decided that every year on April 13th, we were going to have Little Leg's birthday. That is a picture of my leg with a hat on that says life is good. And that every year we were going to celebrate. And not just me or Little Leg, but everyone's life. And it's become this day that's more than my own, where family and friends fly in and we just take a day to celebrate how good. But back at Walter Reed, what I was living for then was to get my life back. So down in physical therapy, regaining the strength that I had lost after laying in my hospital bed for so long. And then the day came where I was fit with my very first prosthetic leg in this series of castings and measurements. And then a few days later, they put you in the parallel bars. They handed me this piece of plastic and metal, and they said, now this is your leg, and you're going to walk with this. And I remember thinking, oh, gosh, like this is not my leg. And how am I going to walk with this thing? I looked across the physical therapy gym and I saw another wounded soldier who was missing both of his legs and an arm. And he was up and walking. Perspective is all around us. So I had no excuse. What do? Well, I stood up and I walked. First in the parallel bars, and then there was crutches, and then a cane. And then the day came where I realized that I was going to be independent. My life was going to go on. But as soon as I learned to walk, I wanted more. I had been an athlete when I was younger, and I would lay in my hospital bed wondering if I could still be an athlete. Could I still feel sweat on my face, the thrill of a finish line? So as soon as I learned to walk, I wondered, what can I do next? As exciting as this day was, even more exciting is what I like to call the start of Melissa Stockwell 2.0. So there were these organizations that would come into the hospital, and their missions were to literally come into our hospital room and get us out doing things that we never thought we'd do with both of our legs, much less with one. So I took every opportunity that presented itself. And before I knew it, I was months after losing my leg, doing the New York City Marathon on a bike that I powered with my arms, but crossing that finish line and realizing that I could still be an athlete. Going out to Colorado and learning how to ski on one leg. And after growing up skiing on both of my legs, it was kind of like starting over, back on that bunny slope, on one leg, wobbling all over the place, falling. But by the end of the week, all the way up the mountain, flying down, the wind in my face, and I never felt so free. And going back to the hospital and saying, if I can do that, I can do anything. And it came at a pretty perfect time because there was this presentation that was being put on at the hospital for wounded soldiers about this thing called the U.S. Paralympics. And I went into this room, this kind of conference room, and I listened as this gentleman with a booming voice said, you train hard enough. If you dedicate yourself to a sport, then you can compete on the world's biggest athletic stage as somebody with a disability. As a younger girl, I had dreamed of going to the Olympics as a gymnast. Obviously, that didn't happen. But I sat there in this room thinking that, oh my gosh, I have a second chance. And I could represent a country that I defended over in Iraq, and I could wear that Team USA uniform if I dedicated myself to that. And I left that room knowing that somehow, some way, I was going to be Paralympian. But first, I was medically retired from the Army, went back to school, a new profession in the field of prosthetics, a field of work I didn't even know existed until I needed a leg of my own. But the rewards of learning how to fit other amputees with artificial limbs. When it was 2005, I knew that there was going to be a 2008 Paralympic Games in Beijing, China, and I wanted to be there. And I decided that I wanted to give it a try in the sport of swimming. So if any of you are swimmers out there, you might have the similar concept that the water has this healing effect. I would get in the water, and I would almost forget as though I didn't have a leg. It kind of just made me feel whole again. Not to mention that I had a lot of room for improvement. So the Paralympic Games is not like the military where you sign up and go. You have to beat your competitors. You have to make certain times. And my times were way up here, and they had to come way down here if I had any shot of making it happen. So after I graduated school for prosthetics, I kind of put everything on hold. I moved out to Colorado Springs to the Olympic Training Center, where I swam, ate, and swam and swam and swam with hopes of making this 2008 Beijing team a reality. About 4 years to the day after losing my leg, there was a Paralympic trials where I had to go in and showcase how fast I could swim. A total long shot to make the team. Again, my times were here. They had come down a little bit, but they were nowhere. But I learned a pretty cool lesson. Hard work, dedication, it pays off. And at that Paralympic trials, I took 20 seconds off a 400-meter freestyle, broke American records I didn't even know existed. I was so far from it. And at the end of that meet, my times had put me in the in the world. And it punched my ticket over to Beijing. And when that team was announced, this whole journey from Baghdad, and now I was going to go to Beijing, and I was going to be a Paralympian. It kind of all came full circle. To me, it made sense. So the next stop was Beijing. And if any of you watched the 2008 Olympic Games, you might remember seeing Michael Phelps win 8 gold medals in this water cube, this state-of-the-art structure that they built just for the Olympic and Paralympic Games. So I got to watch him win his medals on TV, and a few weeks later, I found myself in that water cube with my coach, imagining myself on that podium, taking another 20 seconds off because that was realistic, but doing whatever I could do to be on that podium and to make our country proud. So I swam in a few events, some freestyle, some butterfly, and every day I would come out to the blocks. I would look up into the stands and see my family and friends with a flag that said, Little Leg Fan Club. And I knew that regardless of what happened, that they were there for me. And I wish I could tell you that I did well, that I was on that podium, that I even made finals, but I didn't. It was a poor athletic performance on my part. And at the end of the biggest competition of my life, I felt like I let everyone down. Family, my friends, my teammates, my country. I just knew I could have done better for them. But at the end of the Paralympic Games, there's a closing ceremony, and someone is nominated to carry the American flag in, represent the entire US delegation. Typically an honor reserved for someone who has much more than a participation medal, which is what I got. I wanted to chuck it out the window at the time. But when my teammates nominated me to carry, to represent the entire US delegation, and to carry an object that I was so passionate about into a sold-out stadium. We all want the medals. You want the recognition. You want to be on top. But a lot of times it's not about medals. It's about the journey to get there. About overcoming obstacles that come your way that you never expect. About persevering them. And a lot of times ending up better. And this moment, carrying this flag in is something that I relived in my head. Just the magnitude of that moment. So Beijing came, Beijing went. And how do you beat that? How do you beat competing in the Paralympic Games, carrying the flag in? Well, I did what most people would do and went back to work, again in the field of prosthetics, and just the joy of being able to get these other amputees back up on their feet and show them what they were capable of doing. But once an athlete, you're always an athlete. And I knew I wasn't done. And soon after the Beijing Games, I was invited to do a triathlon. So a triathlon is where you swim, you bike, and you run, something I used to think only crazy people did, like who wants to do all of that at the same time and in the same day. But always up for a challenge, decided to give it a shot. Flew out to California, swam, I biked, I ran. I crossed that finish line and I was hooked. The challenge of all 3 sports, being on the same course as able-bodied athletes, crossing that same finish line. The challenge of the different prosthetic legs I had to wear. So if you're not familiar with triathlon, there's this little space that you have called your transition area. And you swim, you come back to your area where your bike is, you bike, you come back to your little area, and then you run. And typically someone has a pair of running shoes there, their bike. Well, I had 1 running shoe, 1 biking shoe, a biking prosthetic leg, a running prosthetic leg. And I would come in and there's like legs flying everywhere as I'm trying to like get them on and off. But I fell in love with it. I loved the sport and I became pretty passionate about it. And turns out I wasn't so bad at it. For the next many years, I was able to travel around the nation, around the world, competing at various world championships and crossing that finish line with our flag overhead never gets old. And then in 2013, wanting to test myself in another way, the mental side of things, and sign up for the elusive Ironman, which is for those that are a little bit crazy. You swim 2.4 miles, you bike over 100 miles, you run a marathon in the same day, and you pay to do this thing. And I remember it was this, the idea was I wanted to finish. I wasn't going to win the race. My goal was to finish. And I started in the water and it was dark. I swam, I biked, I ran. It was dark again. I was carrying glow sticks to see where I was going, and I'm on mile 20 of this run. I'd been on this race course for 14 hours. And I remember wondering, what on earth am I doing here? Like, why am I doing this to myself? And having to kind of stop for a minute, think about why I was running, and realizing that I was running for those that no longer could. And using that motivation to put one step in front of the other, get to that finish line, hear the words that I was an Ironman, and the realization this day that a lot of times in our life, we don't give ourselves enough credit on the things that we can do. If you only try, it's amazing what we can accomplish. So it's been 18 years since I lost my leg. Little leg became an adult this year. And it's been a wild ride. And if I could go back and do it all again, I would. The people I've met, the experiences that I've had. And I can honestly say that I've done more in my life with one leg than I ever would have done with. And true to word, every April 13th, we celebrate. It's become this event, like I said, where family and friends fly in. We may or may not dance on the bar, drink out of my leg, but that's for those that come to find out. But it's truly this day of celebrating, reflecting on the lives that we have. And when I look back at the past many years, I've had some pretty great moments in my own life. Been able to ride a bike and share a dance with George Bush on his ranch down in Texas. I got a presidential kiss when I presented him with an American flag that flew over the Olympic Village, Beijing. Been able to share my story with Katie Couric and her viewers on what was apparently a red dress day. Been able to give a fist bump to the legendary news anchor, Tom Brokaw. One of the most historic days for myself was standing in a room with, at the time, were all 5 living presidents and their spouses on a day that wasn't about politics as too much is these days. But it was bringing both sides together, the opening of the Bush Library down in Texas and the honor of being asked to say the Pledge of Allegiance. And going home that evening just exuding patriotism. Just so proud of where my story had brought me. Been able to share a laugh with Michelle Obama. But out of all of these things, what I'm most proud of is giving back. Because I wouldn't be where I am today if it weren't for the people and the organizations that believed in me to get me here. So back in Chicago, co-founding a group called Dare2tri, where we get athletes with physical disabilities into the sport of triathlon. We take away all the adaptive barriers, the expensive adaptive equipment, the coaching, the training, and we get these athletes, youth, adults, injured service members, to the starting line of a triathlon. They swim, they bike, they run. They cross that finish line, and you can just see the self-worth, the self-confidence exuding from them. We often say that our finish line is just the beginning. And thanks to our family, we've been able to get even more athletes there and to make even more of a difference. Our motto is one inspires many, and our athletes inspire both on and off the race course. Truly one of my proudest professional accomplishments. And then, of course, on the personal side, my husband, Brian, my son, Dallas, my daughter, Millie. The joy of being a parent, the best and hardest job in the world, right? But the joy of being a parent that looks a little bit different. Showing my kids firsthand that it doesn't matter if you look a little bit different. We all have something unique about us. But it doesn't make me and you can't get out there, dream big. And it's my hope that they see me do that, and in turn, they turn around. So I've learned a lot on this journey. It's been a wild ride. I've learned that life is short, as many of us know, some more than others, especially after COVID, the past few years. I've also learned, as cheesy as it may sound, that dreams can come true. Because in September of 2016, mine did. I'd had my son in Dallas. I was able to get back into peak athletic shape, qualify for my second Paralympic Games, the Rio 2016 Paralympic Games. Of any day that my race could have taken place, the day was September 11th of 2016. I woke up that morning in Rio, put on that Team USA uniform, knowing that every swim stroke, every bike pedal, every run step wasn't just for me. It was for those that no longer could. Swimming, biking, and running up and down the streets of Copacabana Beach in Rio. Coming across the finish line, getting a bronze medal that felt like a personal gold. On a historic day because my teammates got gold and silver. It was a USA sweep on September 11th. Standing on that podium, seeing not one, not two, but 3 American flags go up, we heard our national anthem. And this time, hugging my husband and my dad with tears of joy, just so proud to be in that moment. And the best part about it was bringing that medal home, putting it around my son's neck in the culmination of the hashtag Mommy Road to Rio. And because he was too young to make the trip over, we did have these jumbo-sized heads made of him for my family and friends to bob around that race course for extra. So I want to pause here for a minute before I conclude and just share with you all a few things that I've learned. And again, like I said earlier, the hope is that you take these with you. You apply them to your own life. The first one is the power of a team. You guys are a team. And I've been fortunate enough to experience teamwork in all aspects of my life. In the military, teamwork resonated in everything that we did. Nothing says that truer than on April 13th, my teammate, my soldier, literally saved my life. On that podium in Rio, it wasn't just me up there. It was my team, my family, my friends, everyone that believed in me to give. We need people in our lives more than ever. We need those people that you can call when days are tough, because as we know, days can be tough. But they can also be so good. And we need those people that you can talk to help celebrate in the good moments. Find your people, find your team. People that you trust in, people that you rely on, because we are all in this world. I've also come to realize that we don't give ourselves enough credit on the things that we're capable of doing. If you would have told me 20 years ago, so hey Melissa, you're gonna be in the Army, you're gonna go lose a leg, but you're gonna be okay, you're gonna come back, you're gonna have this family, you're gonna be a Paralympian, you're gonna tell people your story, I would have thought, no way is that gonna happen. But here I am telling you about it. What it took for me was losing a leg to kind of find that potential that I didn't know that I had, but it was always there. But how do all of you skip the roadside bomb part and find your own potential? Well, you start by believing that you can. When you come across something and you say, oh, there's no way I can do this, you turn it around and you say, actually, I can do blank. And you fill that blank in with whatever your Paralympic moment may be. Try it. Get out on a limb. 2 years ago, my husband and I, back in Colorado Springs, where we live now, went out on a limb and we opened our own business. And it was scary, as many of you know. You open a business, you have no idea what your life's gonna be like. Are you gonna be able to live on it? And this prosthetic business where we were gonna fit other amputees with artificial limbs. And 2 years later, I'm proud to say that we have fit dozens and dozens and dozens of patients with orthotics and prosthetic devices and truly given them their lives back. But we never would have done that had we not tried. So try something new. If it doesn't work out, that's all right. You'll find something that does work out. So this picture of me was of my lowest of lows, hours after I lost my leg in that Baghdad emergency room. That T on my forehead stood for tourniquet, a crude yet effective way for someone to know that I was severely injured. They found me on the battlefield. But when I look at this picture now, to me, that T stands for turning point, because this was the turning point in my life. We all have a turning point. You know when it happens. Maybe you've had it, maybe you haven't, but you'll know. But this was the moment that I realized that we can't stop the things that come into our own lives. I couldn't stop the fact that a roadside bomb hit my vehicle. I don't know if anybody would have doubted me if I said, oh, woe is me, I lost my leg. But instead it was, all I lost is one leg. Now let's get back. We all have these metaphoric roadside bombs that come into our lives, whether COVID was one of them, loss of a loved one, divorce, things that we oftentimes can't stop. What we can do is choose to perceive the good. Wake up every morning and just be grateful for the things that we have. The power of choice, I like to say. And just about a year ago, I had to use this power of choice. I was at my third Paralympic Games in Tokyo, the COVID Games, where there were no spectators except for these 3 jumbo-sized heads that were up in the stands. And if I show you these pictures of the finish line coming down that blue carpet, you think, wow, like look how happy I am. You might wonder, did you win the race? Were you on that podium? Well, I got 5th in my third Paralympic Games. 8 weeks before this moment, I was actually on a bike here in Grand Rapids on a trail, the White Plains Trail. I hit a branch, I flew off of it, I hit a tree, and I fractured 3 vertebrae back. Trees are hard. I don't recommend you hit them. And the doctor kept telling me it's the best place to break them back. Things you never hear you'd say, right? I didn't need surgery. I just had to rest. Well, rest is the last thing that I wanted to do. 8 weeks before this event that I had trained 5 years. But like everything in life, I had a choice. And I chose to just be happy that I was going to be able to be there on that starting line with that Team USA uniform on. And deciding just to live in the moment. Too often we think about the things that happened yesterday, what's happening tomorrow, that we forget to just live. And crossing that finish line, I can tell you that I was truly the happiest 5th place finisher in Tokyo. And I do have to say that a few months ago, I was actually back here in Grand Rapids, and I went and found that tree. I told that tree not to mess with me again. The power of choice has been so applicable in my own life that I wrote a book about it. And again, the idea that we can't stop the things that happen to us. We couldn't stop the fact that COVID turned our world upside down the past few years. We can't stop when we wake up, you drive to work, and whatever happens on the way. But what you can do, you wake up, find yourself thinking about the good. So often we turn on the news, we're so ingrained to think about the negative that happens. But every time you have that negative thought, turn it around. Make something positive out of it. And I'm so proud to do that with the Our Family brand. And just to be able to be here, truly loving the products, truly loving to be the spokesperson for such a brand that gives back the community as well. And I hope that all of you will walk out of here today, choose to make your life what you want. And the next time something doesn't go your way, which will happen, how are all of you gonna choose to rise up and make your life what you want it to be? I will be in the Expo in the Our Family booth till about 10 o'clock, and hopefully I will see some of you there. Thank you for having me, and enjoy the rest of your day.